for your introduction. I'm going to present a systematic review and meta-analysis that we did the first year of the project. As Judith said, it was involved in the first phase of the project. So the title of the study was the effectiveness of workplace interventions with digital elements to reduce sedentary behavior in office employees. I'm gonna summarize a little bit what Karin said before. I'm not want to be repetitive, but it was the reasons of this systematic review and of course of the reasons of this project. So as Karin said before, office work is one of the most sedentary work sectors, spending almost 73% of their working time sitting. And this prolonged occupational sedentary behavior has been related to harmful effects on health and work-related outcomes, such as musculoskeletal disorders, as she mentioned before, productivity, job dissatisfaction, poor mental well-being, among others. But it has been demonstrated that performing short active breaks of physical activity can improve the levels of sedentary behavior and consequently its harmful effects. So digital interventions has the potential to deliver these physical activity strategies, these short breaks of physical strategies at work, and they has the potential to increase sedentary behavior, to reduce sedentary behavior and increase physical activity. But most of the studies has been focused on increased physical activity instead of reduced sedentary behavior. And as she mentioned, and as they both mentioned before, nowadays hybrid work, which combines work from home and in the office, is the new mode of work for many of these office workers. So this hybrid work further increase the sedentary behavior levels and of course its harmful effects. For that reason, the first objective of this study was to examine the effectiveness of these digital interventions at workplace to reduce sedentary behavior in home office workers. But as Judith said, we didn't find any study focused on that population. So the last or the final aim of this study was to examine the effectiveness of workplace digital interventions to reduce sedentary behavior among office workers. How we developed this study? We looked for randomized control trials in 6 electronic databases. We looked for studies published between 2017 and 2023. The PICO characteristics, so the population intervention, comparison, and outcomes were office workers. We looked for digital interventions targeting to reduce sedentary behavior with control, comparison, and or other intervention group that at least measure the time spent in sedentary behavior, of course. So for each of the included articles, we extracted the author, the year of publication and the country, the number of participants, percentage of male or female, and the mean age of the participants, the study design, so if they were randomized control trials or cluster crossover or quasi-randomized control trials. Regarding the intervention, we extracted the type of intervention, general description, duration of the intervention, and the digital features. I'm gonna talk about that later in the next slide. Regarding the outcomes, we extracted if the studies measured only occupational sedentary behavior or daily sedentary behavior, weekend sedentary behavior, or others, and the tool that they use to measure this outcome, if they used self-reported or device-based measures for that. And finally, we extracted the main findings that each of the studies found. So as I said, regarding the type of intervention, they could include, as Karin said before, these environmental strategies. So the physical changes in the workplace design and environment, It includes strategies that, for example, used height adjustable desks, so for have the ability to switch from sitting to standing. Others included under desk pedaling or treadmills desks. The other type of intervention was those interventions that included policies to change the organization of work. So as Karin said before, they was the organizational level strategies. And it means that companies allowed to the employees to break their sedentary time during working hours. For example, performing these active breaks, short active breaks during their working hours. And the interventions could only include provision of information and counseling. It means that the employees received, for example, tips to reduce sedentary behavior, the benefits to reduce it, or educational sessions, educational material, and others. And finally, the multi-component interventions. They are interventions that at least include two of the others. And regarding the digital features, the first one was the intervention delivery. It means that these tips that I said before, these educational sessions, were delivered through digital elements, for example, through a website, or these tips through emails. The other one was digital log. It means that the participants, the workers, had to enter manually, for example, the stepping time that they spend during the working day. The passive data collection is exactly the same, but in this case, this data was collected passively, automatically, for example, using a device, a wearable, that this wearable collect the number of steps that all the workers perform during their working day. The connected device, it means that, for example, this wearable that I said could be connected to another digital element, for example, connected to a mobile phone application for sending this number of steps from the wearable to the mobile phone application. A schedule prompts, it means that the participants received reminders to break their sedentary behavior, for example, in the computer screen. Automatic tailored feedback, it means that the participants could see their activity patterns in a digital element. For example, as I said before, in the connected device, in this case, workers could see their activity patterns during the working day in the mobile phone applications, thanks to the wearable that automatically collect this data. And finally, the mediated organizational support and social influences. The first one, mediated organizational support, means that the workers receive, for example, motivational messages from the company, from the managers of the company. And the other one, the social influences, means that the workers, for example, could share their experiences through a social chat with the other colleagues from the company. So finally, we included 19 studies in the systematic review. Most of the participants were female. Most of the studies were cluster randomized control trials followed by a randomized control trial. They collected occupational and non-occupational sedentary behavior. Most of these outcomes were collected using device-based measures, and the active PAL was the most used tool for collect this data. And 7 of them used the self-reported data to collect this, for example, through questionnaires. And only 2 of them use the both type of measurements tool. So we found that multi-components interventions were the most common among the studies. All of them include the provision of information and counseling. 15 of them, so almost all of them, include strategies at organizational level, so policies, and 7 of them include strategies at environmental level, so these physical changes. And only 3 of the studies include only the provision of information and counseling. And regarding the digital elements, the information delivery was the most common used digital feature, followed by scheduled prompts, these reminders to remind to workers to break the sedentary behavior. 11 of the studies include the provision of feedback. 10 of them use passive data collection for collect these activity patterns. 7 of them used connected devices and mediated organizational support and social influences. And only 3 use the digital logs, so this manually entering of the activity. Regarding the meta-analysis, only 9 of these 19 studies could be included in the meta-analysis. And in total, we found that these digital elements could reduce the sedentary behavior in almost 30 minutes per 8 hours of workday. And we found that the interventions that were based on theories and interventions that include elements at organizational level, environmental level, and educational or informational material were the interventions that were most effective to reduce this sedentary behavior. As Karin said, multi-component interventions are the most effective. So to conclude, the take-at-home message is this, that the multi-component interventions are the most effective and the interventions based on theories are the most effective. Anyway, we found a wide range of digital elements with a lot of heterogeneity between them. So it was a little bit difficult to compare or to say what is the most effective thing to reduce sedentary behavior. So, and considering this new mode of work, we will have to evaluate these digital interventions targeting the home office workers. So thank you for your attention.
I think you said on one of your slides there was that we weren't able to determine what the most effective intervention approach was. Did you say that, or in this one here?
Not the most effective intervention, the most effective digital element.
Okay, okay. Yeah, because I was going to just ask you that question anyway, regardless of whether it was difficult or not. I suppose if I were going to take a take-home message out of this, if you were to go and you were to support Alan, for example, with 500, because these are office-based, there's such limited data on home office. Could you give, I suppose, based on the review of the literature, did you have, I'm going to say, a preference, or would you have looked at something and said, yes, this is the most viable approach that we couldn't get statistically, or that we couldn't get from that meta-analysis? What would you implement if you were in charge of an office workforce? What would you do based on this?
Of course, that the company will be involved in the intervention is so important. So, for example, this information delivery that was so common in the digital features, it could mean that, for example, workers receive message from the company, from the manager. So I think that it's a key point for the interventions, and working together with other changes, for example, this provision of height adjustable desks, or others like this, the feedback provision, because it's workers are aware of their real sitting time. So I think that all this together is so important. And in this new hybrid work, I think that these digital elements could also improve the the value of these interventions because people are working alone. So the social chat is also important because it's the way to share or to talk to colleagues. So,
Michael?
Was there any specific reason, just going back to the search strategy, that it was like, I think you referenced 2017 to 2023, the RCTs, like, was there any reason it wasn't a broader scope?
because there were another systematic review that focused on that topic, on digital interventions to reduce sedentary behavior in office workers. And their systematic review was until 2017. So for that reason, we start to look for studies from that data, yes.